guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be talking about 10 things that I wish I would have known as a beginner gardener. I asked Aaron to join us in this conversation because he does offer a different perspective. We have slightly different backgrounds. My parents have a garden center here in town, and they have a fairly large garden. We've done tours of it before. So I grew up kind of in the industry. Not that I was paying attention to any of it at the time. I didn't care at all, and I never thought I would end up back in the industry. But I think you soak in little things, here
Sure.
and there. So I feel like even though, after we got married and had our own, like our first place with a little gardening space, I feel like I had some very, very basic knowledge, but I remember feeling very overwhelmed. And it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted in a space. And I got hung up on a lot of different things. So I thought I would talk through some of those. Anyway, let's jump into the list. Number 1 is to make your garden what you want it to be. So this is something that I kind of struggled with in the beginning because I was just trying to find myself. And I just want to stress to everybody that you, at the end of the day, it's your space. There's no set standard and there's no set rules that you are obligated to follow. And if you plant something, and this is one of the things that I feel like has resonated with a lot of you guys through the years, if you plant something in your garden and you end up not liking it, or it's not quite right, take it out. If you move into a new home and there's some stuff that you don't like about it, but it's still alive. I know a lot of people feel some guilt. Oh, it's still living. I feel bad for taking it out. Take it out. If it's not going to make you happy in your space, fix it. It's all stuff that can be fixed. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like in the beginning, I would have been more the type to be like, oh, just leave it. Let's work around it. Let's not work around it. Now, I mean,
Yeah.
I still hold on to that a little bit. That's still a little bit of me because of change. I don't do change quite as
Well,
easily.
it might be pragmatic to keep it, for budgetary constraints or whatever the case is. But, if there's like a shrub that's there and you're like, it is in your, in the way in the overall design that you're thinking, just get rid of it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's absolutely
And
no
don't feel
guilt.
bad.
Yeah. I remember there was one tree in our backyard. I don't know if you remember this. You probably do. It was a scarlet curls willow. I planted it and I just thought, that's not quite right. So we moved it over to one side and we actually had to have somebody else come help us. Remember, we had Victor come and help us. So it was Aaron and Victor and myself. We moved it over and then I looked at it again. I thought, no, it needs to be 6 inches this way. It's just not lining up right. So we moved it twice. We planted it once and moved it twice before it was right. And I'm so thankful we did that. It was worth that extra work.
Yeah.
And I made the garden the way I wanted it to be. Even though it took extra effort, it took extra time to get it there, it was 100% worth it. But I feel like, we all get hung up on different things that you hear. And, I don't know, just don't let somebody else's agenda or style or whatever seep into what you're doing in your space, unless you love it. If you love somebody's style or you love what they stand for, then try to, emulate that as much as you can or want to. But in the end, it's yours. Make it what you want it to be. The second thing that I would recommend to a beginner gardener and to myself at that time is to start slow, especially when it comes to vegetable gardening, because it is easy. I have an all or nothing personality, big time. I'm either all in or I'm not going to even go there. When it comes to vegetable gardening, I think a lot of people as beginners think, I want to grow everything, and then you end up with this huge amount of stuff that you're unsure of how to take care of, and it just becomes overwhelming, and then a lot of people give up halfway through because you start to run into some issues, maybe some insect problems or fungal problems, and things start to dwindle, and it's a huge learning curve in the beginning. So what I would recommend a beginner gardener doing is to take a look at their grocery list. What are you continually buying on a weekly basis or bi-weekly or every other week? How often are you buying these specific vegetables and fruits? Only plant those things. If you eat a lot of onions, a lot of potatoes, which we do eat a lot of those things, a lot of garlic, we plant a lot of those 3 things and they store really well. So I know that that's a very good use of my space. Planting cauliflower would be a dumb idea for us. I never buy cauliflower, not maybe twice in our entire married life. We've been married for 19 years. So that would be a waste of space for me, unless you've got something you want to experiment with. So here's the deal. In the beginning, pick those things that you eat a lot of. Your kids love strawberries, plant strawberries. If they love broccoli, plant broccoli. Samantha loves broccoli. So that's something that we will plant this year more of than we did last year, because last year she wasn't digging it quite as much. And then every year, add 1 or 2 new items. either to experiment with or whatever. And don't do like a massive row of it until you know if it's something that you and your family might enjoy. Number 3 is to install a drip system. Now, this might not apply to everybody, but oh my goodness, I wish that we would have done this at the very beginning, because see, I grew up in a garden that did not have an irrigation system, so I didn't know any better. And if you've seen any tours of my parents' garden, if you can imagine watering that thing by hand every single week, it was a beast. Like, we had a hard time going anywhere because things had to be tended to and watered, and it was on such a schedule that if we missed, then, so you become like this, it becomes a little bit more of a burden kind of a thing. And I feel like if you can automate, anything you can automate or make more efficient is so worth the time. And if you can eliminate one of those chores, it's going to be a daily chore for you, or maybe even twice a day sometimes in the heat of summer, then do that, because you're going to save yourself so much time over the long run. And you don't have to have an irrigation system for this. We've done several videos showing you how to run a drip system from a hose faucet sticking out of the side of your house. There's a certain like configuration of parts, and maybe we can link a video down below. We set up a drip system for my sister-in-law's raised beds where we had to come off of a hose faucet off the side of the house. We had to go underneath concrete edging, underneath the lawn, underneath more concrete edging, and pop up into her raised bed area. And then we ran a like a header line underneath the ground and popped up on the interior of each one of her raised beds. Slick, clean. It was on a timer, so she never had to monkey with anything. It just went off automatically every day. And I know that she really enjoyed that, and I really enjoy having a drip system. I think anything that you can make more efficient or work better for you will just hedge you from becoming burned out or just getting overwhelmed in the middle of summer, because who wants to stand out there, once or twice a day and
in August
water things? Or like, oh, I gotta go home. I can't go out to dinner with you guys because I gotta go home and water my garden. Like, that's such a bummer.
Yeah.
Unless you love it. It might be your like downtime, your me time, and I get that. I totally do. And I don't know if you have any more wisdom about drip systems, but I do know, and you've always said that in the beginning, trying to figure it out, there's so many different options out there that you will probably waste a little money.
Yeah.
In the beginning, don't you think?
Yeah, you just have to jump into it. I mean, the biggest, just buy parts, parts that that you need, and it's probably going to take multiple trips to wherever, or maybe you have to order from a place multiple times, but you're going to have to get a timer, and just, if you watch the video, you'll probably have to get like a pressure regulator.
They're all inexpensive, but when you're, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but
it's just tough when you're like, is it going to fit? And no, it probably won't. And you'll buy the wrong one. You'll have to take it back. But everybody kind of has to do that journey themselves. And but it's worth it. I guess that's like the encouragement, is that it's worth it to get over that hump of learning how to do it, even though it's a little bit of a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
Everybody kind of has to do that. But you can watch. There's lots of videos online showing how to do it. So it's not as if it's not impossible. You just have to put in a little bit of time to learn what works best for your area.
Well, and we've tried lots of different things. Soaker hoses, which I wouldn't go there. We've tried a 1/4-inch drip, running that. I wouldn't go there either. We eventually landed on drip tape, which you have to order from like Drip Depot or something like that online. But we have found that you can run that the furthest distance. It's the best coverage, but you can't curve with it. So there are some pros and cons to everything, and you just kind of have to figure it out for your space, but it's 100% worth it. Number 4 is to keep a planting journal. I showed you guys in a video this last summer my very old, like 2009, which was 3 years after we were married, a planting journal that I had been keeping for a while. Like, we just moved into the townhouse, I think, and we had our first growing season under our belts. And what I did is I just had all of my planting tags. I took them out of the containers and taped them into a little notebook, and then just made notes, like planted this on this date. And it's fun to look back through it, honestly. So if you can keep a planting journal, we use our videos as a journal now, because I can go back and see when I planted certain things, or just keep your plant ID tags in a Ziploc baggie in a drawer somewhere. Or, if you want to get fancy with it, ID everything out in your garden. You can get plant identification tags, but the thing is, the more you plant, you think you'll remember things, You absolutely will not. Like, that is a guarantee. You will not remember everything that you planted. And it was so handy for me, especially in the beginning, to have tags, because I would plant something and then I'd see it the next spring and I'd be like, I don't know what to do with this because I can't even remember what it is. Should I cut it back right now? Well, you can refer back to your tag, and then if that information's on the tag, awesome. Sometimes tags will include that, or at least you have the name so you can Google it or ask somebody and you can figure out what you need to do going forward with that plant. It helps a lot with care and that sort of thing. So I think that that is a very wise thing to do from the gate, because especially as you get further on down in your gardening journey, you will have so many plants that you have planted. It's kind of wild. Woo! Do you hear that? The wind is howling outside right now. The fifth thing that I would recommend to a beginner gardener is to study the plant a little bit before you commit to putting it in a very focal area. Just because a lot of times, we are drawn in by the plants that look the best at the garden center, right? Like whatever's in bloom, like I want that. I need that in my life right now. And so it looks amazing, it looks peak, but how long does it look like that? What does it look like after the fact? Does it bloom again? And how big does it get? I mean, all of those kinds of things are so invaluable. And if you study the plant a little bit, you might find that, oh, this thing's only in bloom for 2 weeks. I'm going to side it a little bit back, and I'm going to put something in front that's a little bit more high impact for longer. And that way you can get really good balance in your garden and you can get focal points right. I feel like that's important.
Probably why a lot of people choose evergreens as, focal points.
Yeah.
Because they look like that pretty much all the time.
True.
And so you at least know that, like, this is the look.
Right.
And then you can kind of accent with things that come in and out of bloom.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, if your main thing is something that's doesn't look great for 6 months or 7 months out of the year, maybe not a good idea.
Right. There's also some spots in our garden that we specifically leave empty for annuals because they are incredibly high impact, and we always put those in very focal areas. So that might be something you want to consider as well. Leave those types of spots. It can be a small spot or a large spot for a supertunia, or, I don't know. There's so many different ones. A salvia, an annual salvia that blooms just like crazy all summer and doesn't need to be deadheaded. So you just might think about that too. It could be an evergreen anchor, it could be an annual anchor, or just, a stellar perennial like your echinaceas and sedums, and hydrangeas are an awesome shrub as a focal point. All of those things are super low maintenance, do not need to be deadheaded, and look great all the time. So I think it's worth a little bit of investigation before you commit it to a really focal spot in your garden. I've made the mistake several times. The sixth thing I wish I would have thought about was to consider plant spacing. And that means look at the back of the tag, see how big that plant is supposed to get to its full mature size. And there's just so much information online and in books and all kinds of stuff in different styles of gardens. And again, I want to stress that there are no set rules and you can follow whatever you want to do. Like there's the very overabundant, very cottagey look where everything touches and intermingles and intermixes, and you might love that. I love that. I really love that. And so we tend to plant our things closer together than the recommended spacing on the tag, and that is okay. And there's also some areas out in our garden, like our evergreens. I want to make sure that they have enough space, largely. I want to make sure that most of our evergreens have enough space to get to their full size without running into a bunch of stuff. So I like to make sure to give them their space. So I think that there's times where it applies and times where it doesn't. But as a beginner gardener, I would recommend, especially, if you're starting in with vegetable gardening, give yourself some space. Don't cram everything so close together that things are going to choke each other out. And I see some people's gardens where they do that in raised beds, and it's beautiful. It's gorgeous, but they know how to take care of the plants. They know how they grow. They know how to prune them. Well, if you've never planted an indeterminate tomato or a pumpkin vine before and you don't know what to expect, you're going to get this 8 to 10 foot tomato plant, tall and wide, and a 10-foot diameter pumpkin vine that's going to be crowding everything out in your beds. So I always think that, consider the spacing when you're a beginner. Let yourself have some time to experience and grow these things. Figure out how you want to take care of them. You might be a type of person who loves to prune your tomato plants. A lot of people do. It keeps them very compact. You can grow all you want in a tiny little space because you know how to prune them. Some people like to plant them and let them ramble and they produce tons of tomatoes and they're great, but they are kind of a wild mess. So you might be one or the other. And so you might be a person who can keep it in a small space, or somebody who wants to let it grow to its full size and not mess with it. So I think just getting a little bit of time under your belt and a little bit of experience growing certain things, you'll know what that plant needs. I also feel like when things get too crowded, it can cause, especially in high humidity areas, it can cause more fungal issues because things don't have a chance to dry out. Plants don't get proper light, so they maybe won't be quite as productive. Just some things to think about. I just say consider plant spacing. In the end, do what you want to do. I always err on planting a little bit closer together than a little further apart, though, for the most part.
As a little more of an advanced gardener.
Yes. The seventh thing, and this is kind of a hard one when you're a beginner, is to remember to plant for winter interest. It seems like the most boring thing to do in the beginning. You know, as a beginner, walk into a garden center, I guess, or I should say me as a beginner gardener, I wanted all the high blooming stuff. I wanted the annuals. I wanted like the big impact, like what's the most impressive? I want that thing. Without thinking about what's my garden going to look like 5 to 6 months out of the year. You know, we're in a northern climate, so maybe some of you in more mild climates don't have to worry about this quite as much. But we do. Our landscape is barren for 5 to 6 months out of the year. It looks like kind of brown and kind of sad, but it doesn't have to. So I would say, as a beginner gardener, absolutely buy annuals and some really high impact plants, but also save a little bit of that budget to put in an evergreen, or put in something with really brightly colored bark, like a dogwood, for winter, or, you know, something that maybe has beautiful seed heads. You know, I mean, echinacea is a great one. If you plant that, you're going to have summer color. You leave the seed heads and they look beautiful all winter long with a little frost or snow on top of them. There's trees with peely, interesting looking bark, or a really interesting structure that you can uplight. And in the wintertime in the snow, that's absolutely gorgeous. I just feel like that's a very important point to remember so that you enjoy your space for more months out of the year. It's not just a spring, summer, and early fall hobby. It's all year.
I feel like that's one of those things that that most beginners probably don't consider right off the bat, but it's one of those things that you wish you could have told yourself.
Yes.
Because like you're not thinking about it today, but as you get into gardening more and more, or landscape gardening, you'll wish you would have started those evergreens 5 years ago. Because
they are slow
now
growing.
It's like, okay, well now I'm starting at square one with my winter interest.
Yeah.
Because I was so focused on the vegetable garden or flowers. Which
I don't blame you. Those are really fun things. But yeah,
well, I mean, like one of the first things that you bought in our very first place was one of the dinner plate hibiscus.
Oh, yeah, big red blooms.
Yeah, you were like, it's huge.
It's huge blooms. That's
giant
impressive.
Bloom. That's what I need.
Yeah.
In my life.
It was the worst. It was the worst plant. If I would have done any research at all, they didn't have the good hybrid hibiscus like they do now. That now they're like nice and full and they've got really good growth habit. Mine looked like a weed.
Yeah.
And it was constantly dropping leaves and petals everywhere, and then they get crushed on the driveway and create red stains. It was just the worst thing ever. If I would have put a boxwood in there, boxwood cone with like little pansies or petunias around, that would have been so much better. And then we would have had the boxwood for the rest of the fall, winter, and early spring. But you always wish for those, like the shade or the evergreens, you always wish later on in your journey that you would have planted them
sooner, early.
So like, take it from us. It is worth it to spend the budget on that.
It's basically like telling young people to invest.
Yeah.
You know they won't.
Right.
But it's like good advice either way.
Sure. The next thing, number 8, is to keep a seed inventory of what kind of seeds you have on hand. And this might be geared a little bit more toward people who've gardened for a little while. I don't know, you might be a beginner gardener and think, I want to grow everything from seed, which is awesome. But you get sucked into the vortex. It's a thing. And it gets out of control really fast, because let me tell you what, when you start starting things from seed, you feel like you have a superpower, especially when you can get rosemary to germinate. That's my superpower this year. I've got beautiful rosemary plants over there from seed, and it's so incredibly fulfilling and rewarding to do it that way. But what happens is that you get very excited. You have nothing to do in the winter time, so then you're ordering tons of seeds. You're going to I still go to garden centers even in the middle of winter, and I pick up seeds here or there. And if you don't have any kind of list or inventory going, you can get like multiples of the same kind of seed very easily, because it's easy to forget. So you can use Google Sheets, Excel, a document of some kind, or the Notes app on your phone. I keep mine in Google Sheets. And I've got the little icon right on my front screen here, so I can just tap it. I can get into my seed inventory, and I've got everything right here. And I've even got it categorized by veggies and herbs has its own sheet. Gourds, pumpkins, and squash has its own. Annual flowers, perennial flowers, ornamental grass, fruit, and other. So I've got several different tabs, and then I've got I know what I have in my inventory, like down to the seeds sometimes, because sometimes they're numbered. And so that way, if I'm at a garden center, I think, oh, that's a gorgeous seed. Let me see if I've got that. Yep, I got 3 packets of that. Don't pick up another one. It's just very, very handy, and it happens very fast. So keeping a seed inventory it's a great idea. Number 9 is to get yourself some good tools. Having the right tool for the job is so huge.
Oh, yeah.
In your enjoyment of the job. And I'm not going to talk about this one in too much detail because we do sell things on our website, and that's not what this is about. And everybody's different too. Like for me, having a nice pair of hand pruners that I know how to maintain, sharpen, and make nice again after I've misused them or left them outside is really nice. Some people like to get really cheap snips that they can use around in the garden because they're notorious for leaving them around or throwing them away on accident with their garden debris. And that happens too. So whichever one you are, like figure out what works for you and get that thing. There are a few things that, like the good pair of hand pruners, a bag, like a refuse bag. We have one that has a hard bottom on it that I can drag around so it doesn't get holes. We have a lot of gravel, and that's been a huge game changer for me. Having something to make your legs not hurt if you're going to, some kind of a pad or kneeling knee pads, something like that to make it easier on your body. We use augers to dig holes a lot. That's super helpful, makes the job very, very quick, or have a shovel that fits you right. Like you prefer long-handled shovels.
Yeah.
I prefer the half-size shovel. That's just, I can get better leverage on it. What else? Oh, we have a Fiskars, and I can say the brand because we don't sell this one. Fiskars shrub rake that I love. It's just this little itty bitty rake that's plastic, super inexpensive, and the tines are really flexible. So I can rake stuff and it doesn't wreck my plants. So I can rake over the top of things when I'm like trying to get leaves out from around.
It's like you like it because it's cheap or because it's it's flimsy. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not a rigid rake.
Yeah.
It's like the non-rake rake.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It's like not the type of thing that it's not rigid.
Yeah. The other thing, Gorilla carts are awesome. I'm trying to remember. I like the 7 cube. I don't use them as much as I used to because we've had to do something for our bigger property. So we have gators that we roll around, and I can put my refuse and stuff, my clippings in the back of that. But I used the 7 cubic foot one all the time, and we've tried all the sizes, but I used that one the most because it was still small enough to get down small garden paths, but it was big enough to where I felt like I could do a substantial amount of work before I needed to go dump it. And it's got a dump feature, so it's got like a little handle, and we've done videos about it before. We don't sell that one either. But you can just clip I don't know the right word, squeeze the lever, and then it dumps the stuff. It makes it easy.
Retractable hoses.
Oh, yeah. Retractable hoses are awesome. Coiling up hoses is the worst. It's the worst. So it's very nice to have one.
Basically, your sentiment is to invest some of your budget, not necessarily all in plants.
Yeah. Get yourself some tools.
Put some of it into some of the tools that you use as well.
And it might be like the first year you just kind of like make do with what you have, which is totally fine. The first lots of years we made do with what we had. But it's like something to think about. Like, what could I get that would make this more comfortable? That would make this easier or quicker? Like, I hate planting bulbs. Planting bulbs is the worst. Using an auger to dig holes to plant bulbs makes it so much better. Because you can zip your holes in the ground, throw your bulbs in basically, and then just cover them over. Using those little like hand tools that have the circle, like why those even exist? Nope. No.
Don't you think gardening is like most hobbies where you can spend a lot of money to make things more, to make them easier and more enjoyable, but it's not required?
No, it's not. And sometimes it doesn't require a lot of money. Like the Fiskars rake, it's probably like $15.
Yeah,
or less. And it's a kind of a game changer. It also doesn't drag gravel around like some rakes do.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of gravel, so it's very handy. And the very last tip, number 10, is not to compare your gardening journey with somebody else's. And it almost seems cliche to say comparison is the thief of joy, but it absolutely is. And don't do that, or try not to do that, because you have to understand with gardening, you're playing a long game. It's not a short game sort of situation. And when you see pictures online, or you see what people are sharing, you see pictures in a magazine, those gardens probably took 30 plus years to get that way. I mean, when we show my parents' garden, everybody always loves when we tour their garden, but it's 30 plus years old. It's mature. It's had time. They've had time to refine things. Gardens evolve so much, you know, or your style evolves and you really kind of finally get something to click. Some years it doesn't, or sometimes you do a project and it's like, I don't really love that. That's not really, I don't know, you know, I'm going to have to tweak that. And it takes several years to tweak it to get it the way you want it. So, you know, everybody's at a different stage along the way. And I feel like a lot of people get trapped in that, like, well, it doesn't look like that, so I'm just going to quit. Like, it's too hard. My things die. Well, so do mine. My things still die. I forget to water some things, or I just don't know how to take care of it right, and it dies. That happens to every single person. But the thing is, the things that you're seeing out there aren't necessarily real. And they are the best parts of somebody's things, especially if you're talking like Pinterest images or magazines. Like, I've been to plant magazine shoots. And let me tell you, like, the picture that you're seeing is a doctored image. It's not, their garden might almost be that way, but there's a truck full of plants sitting behind the camera where they can strategically cut off blooms and place them around on different plants in the garden to make them look more full, to make them look more peak, which the plant has the potential to do that, but maybe it doesn't look like that when they came to do the photo shoot. So
it's the same thing as when you go to McDonald's or any burger place and you look at the menu, and like, of course the picture that they're going to have is like the perfect version of that burger, but you're not going to actually get that picture. And of course there's like laws in the US about you can't lie to your customers about what it is, but it's basically just like the perfect version of that thing, and what you're going to get is an approximation to that. And I think it's the same in gardening. If you are looking at a plant tag, you may not get the exact same experience because they're going to plant it. You know, some plants thrive better in certain parts of the country, and they'll work in your part of the country, but they actually work better in Michigan or whatever. And so, of course, plant companies know that. They're going to take a picture in whatever environment it looks the best in.
Sure.
And they don't want to lie to you, but they do want to show you like a nice representation.
The potential of how things can look. And it's interesting too, because some plants that we have that are established will have an amazing year with one plant and it looks awesome. And then next year it's like, didn't perform as well this year. Dang. So, you know, what you're seeing is not necessarily 100% true. A lot of times images are doctored in color too, like lighting is a huge one. You can saturate an image and make it look a little bit better. You can do all kinds of things to images to make them look better. So, I mean, all that to say, I mean, I don't want to say that everything you see is fake, because it's not, but it's just, like, your journey is your own and you should be enjoying it. And I know it's easy sometimes to get bogged down and like, oh, nothing's looking good, you know, but you will get there. Like, just keep working at it, keep plugging away. And, you know, a lot of times too, what we share online, like, I don't want to share everything that looks horrid. I mean, you know, if you've watched us, a lot, we do show pretty much every spot in our garden, but I'm not going to continually go and show you that hillside over there. Looks like junk. You've seen it. Yeah. I've showed it to you, but I'm not going to show it to you every single day because I want you to see pretty things. And I'm excited to share my successes. And that, I feel like, can be a little bit more motivating. You know, it's motivating to see what people are doing that's like working for them. And that's really exciting. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something wrong if yours doesn't look like that. Yeah. You know? That makes sense. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to say about that other than I just hope you guys, especially if you're beginners, just enjoy it. Try to enjoy it as much as you can, and just know that it's not a perfect thing. It's not a hobby that's going to be perfect all the time, and there's lots of failing that needs to happen. Well, for me, I learn by doing, so I have to fail a lot of times before I can have success at it. I don't research. I don't read stuff about what I'm growing. I'll do basic, like, how deep do I plant this seed? Perfect. That's all I need to know, and then I will just work it out, you know, as I go. And we all have different approaches that way, but just try not to get bogged down in too much. Just do it and have fun with it, and don't compare it with somebody else's garden who's, you know, been doing it for 50 years. Erin, do you have any other words of wisdom? Those were the 10 that we kind of discussed.
Number 11, go plant a tree.
Absolutely. And that's it, you guys, for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this. 10 things that I wish I would have known when I was just starting out. Feels like a long time ago now. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.